All right, everyone. Welcome to the Shaolin AI podcast. Glad to have you here. This is going to be the first one. We're on video, so you can see that. But this is going to be meant to be either listened to or watched over video. But this is your go-to podcast for any AI enthusiasts, your beginners, your professionals, anyone seeking insightful discussion into the latest AI news and industry topics. We'll also be going into some about what is Shaolin AI, what is the company, things like that. But mainly it's just we're here to entertain, folks. We, meaning me. And who am I? I'm Zach. I'm the lead AI instructor for Shaolin AI. And yeah, so today we're going to kind of kick it off with kind of a big question, which is why a boot camp? Why should I do a boot camp? Why do boot camps exist? Are boot camps any good? So this is going to be whether you're considering a boot camp or whether you're just curious or about thinking about kind of the educational system as a whole and how it serves kind of these high-tech niches that have come out recently. So it kind of the pipeline from raw individual to data scientist or AI engineer or something like that. How do you get from point A to point B? How do boot camps fit into that? Do boot camps make sense? And also, do traditional degrees make sense still? Which I know there's some people out there who are kind of down on the traditional kind of credentialed environment. So anyway, this episode's for you. We're gonna kind of dive right into things, and basically we just are gonna have continuing episodes, probably about weekly, to talk to other professionals and things, get their thoughts on AI. So we will have guests going forward, but today is a solo act. So bear with me any long pauses. So yeah, so the topic for today, boot camps. What are they about? Should I do one? Should I tell my friends to do one? Should my kids do one? Those types of questions. So basically, I think most people are familiar with boot camps. Essentially, they fall into this category of not quite a degree-seeking program, not quite a traditional. I guess you would think of like going to like ITT Tech or something like that. So it's not quite that. They're designed to be kind of condensed learning kind of skills, right? So the boot camp is you come to the boot camp, you pick up skills that are designed to get you a job. So the boot camp's focus is get you a job or get you the skills needed to get a job. And so boot camps are typically paid for out of pocket. There are student loans for boot camps. They're essentially just high interest loans and things like that. There's also a million boot camps out there. Now, when Shaolin AI started, there weren't very many AI related boot camps out there because we started prior to the release of ChatGPT. And so I saw a niche that was not being served where there's a lot of boot camps that are for like front end, back end web development and things like that. There's not a lot of boot camps directed towards like data science and AI specifically. And so anyway, now there's a lot more options in the field. And so how do you know which one's good, which one's no good, and things like that? Well, first of all, I think most of them are going to be pretty good, although some are going to be more expensive than others, right? So that's something to look out for. You want to kind of price check and see how much they cost, because there's a lot of ways of getting these skills. You don't necessarily want to overpay for it, which is something that also led to the development of Shaolin AI. We wanted to offer it at an affordable rate. But and for those unaware, Shaolin AI is a bootcamp company. We also do AI consulting and other things like that. But we're not going to focus on that right now. Um, but the idea is you take a short period of time. It's usually like 3 months to a year. Our bootcamp is 6 months long, and you get those job ready skills. Um, Now, here's the thing. One of the reasons why boot camps exist is because there has been a failure in the traditional computer science education. Um, and one of those failures is the fact that most computer science degrees do not include education for jobs that are currently out there. Um, I say that, and I know I'm gonna get pushback on it. So there are certain places, certain degrees that focus more on job specific skills, but a lot of what the computer science traditional education is really has very little to do with what a lot of the jobs are out there, especially in the world of data science. So if you want to go and you're like, hey, I want to work in AI, what degree do you pick? What major do you pick in college, right? Um, well, you would pick computer science. That's what you would think. But then you're going to spend most of your time taking generals, then the rest of your time taking courses about like computational theory and things like that. Now, it does give you a solid foundation that allows you to learn things on your own. But aren't you at a university to learn things to get a job? That's what most people are at a university for. And so because of this weird disconnect where there's these jobs out there where they have certain skill sets and tools that they want you to know how to use, but there's not really a degree for it. So, me specifically, I've been working as a data scientist for the past 10 years, specifically in NLP. When I look for jobs, they're like, I guess we want you to have a degree in computer science, math, or stats, right? Now, if I went back and did my degree in computer science, math, or stats, I would have no NLP experience, natural language processing. That they don't teach that in any of those tracks. Maybe they have one or two courses on NLP as like an elective in your computer science department at your local four-year university, but probably not. Now, some might say, okay, well, that's why they have master's programs. Sure, there's master's programs related to NLP, related to data science. Those are very new as well. Within the last 5 years, I'd say they've sprung up. So really, they didn't exist back when I graduated. I remember there was one NLP master's program somewhere. But anyway, especially in tech where you don't necessarily need advanced degrees to work. It's kind of famous for, it's kind of if you have the skills, you can do it. So if you have the skills, I guess that's kind of worth its weight in gold as far as getting a job in tech. But the problem is on the hiring side, which I've been a part of as well. It's hard to know who has the right skills because you kind of throw out a checklist of do you have you have Python, pandas, scikit-learn, all these things, and most recent graduates really don't, and they really have never done anything related to like a data science project. They've never actually done anything similar to that in their education, even if they're coming off of a master's or they're like a PhD student. So their real world skills are really lacking, and so you're really gambling at hiring these recent grads when it doesn't really make sense why they would be spending so much time working on things that are totally unrelated to the jobs they're applying for, right? So that's kind of the issue. Now, some would say, well, Harvard and whatever whatever school, public school in your state, they've got enough money, they've got enough know-how. Why don't they just change their curriculum and update it? Well, that's what I thought, because like I said, I went to college and I kind of ran into these same things where I was like, well, I want to do this as a job. Where are the classes for this? And you kind of have a hard time finding it. It's almost in all disciplines. So I even found a video on that a guy made. He was a recent Stanford computer science grad. Let me see if I can show you this. This is the guy right here, funny looking guy. But anyway, introverted madness. He has this Stanford computer science is broken. So he kind of broke down the problem as well. So he said a lot of the stuff that I ran into, which is computer science education does not teach you how to do things most people associate with computer science jobs. So, for instance, most people would think building a website or making an app, right? And he went through his whole catalog of Stanford computer science, and they had one class on building websites and one class on building apps in the entire education. So that would be one semester, couple hours a week, where you would learn how to build a website. The rest of it is like, I don't know, reversing binary trees, or I don't know what they're doing. But, they're learning the basics of computation, right? Which means it's almost like if you wanted a chef to bake you a cake, but instead of teaching the chef how to bake, they go to school and learn how to make an oven, right? That's kind of what we're at with the computer science world, where you go to Stanford computer science and they teach you how to make a computer from scratch, which is very cool and super good to know, I guess. But they're going to apply for jobs where they're having to make websites and make things. The computer's already invented. You don't need to reinvent it again. Now, certainly there's PhD level stuff where you're doing quantum computing and all kinds of stuff. And if you're getting into that, then great. But, then you're really not looking at a boot camp either, because you're getting a PhD. You probably know what you're going to do for the rest of your life, right? So, anyway, basically, there's this disconnect between what these computer science degrees are giving students and what jobs they're looking for. And most of this boils down to, and this is touched upon in that video that I referenced, which once again I'd say check out that video. It's an interesting one. But and he kind of breaks down the problem in a specific way. But he brings up this idea that, well, Stanford is a liberal arts educational institution, as most Western universities are. Meaning, what is liberal arts? Does it have anything to do with liberal politics? No, we're not talking about liberal politics or anything like that. We're talking about traditional liberal arts things. This goes back to kind of the idea of kind of creating well-rounded citizens, right? And you teach these noblemen how to be philosophical, mathematical, and be able to speak multiple languages. You're kind of like a Renaissance man. That's what the liberal arts education is for. This is why when you go to college, you have to take generals, which are like, you have to learn about society. You have to do an art history class, right? I love that art history class. It was a good one. So liberal arts education, what we're talking about is essentially what came about from places where you had to speak Latin. That's a liberal arts education. Now, I'm all for a liberal arts education. However, a lot of people, when they're going to school, are going to school because they want to make a bunch of money coding, right? Now, to make a bunch of money coding, do you have to have read Moby Dick? Do you have to have read the Aeneid in Latin? No, you don't have to have done either of those things to make a bunch of money coding. And actually, there's certain countries out there that teach their students only coding. They skip all that liberal arts stuff. Some like India and China, a lot of their universities are more technical, and they're just saying, hey, we're just going to teach you the technical stuff because that's what gets you jobs and that's what makes sense. So they skip all that extra stuff. Although I've heard there's issues with China and India in their kind of tech pipeline that may be outdated or something like that. Not familiar with it, but yeah, it's more liberal arts education is more about the soft skills. It's being educated in politics and history and things like that, which once again, super valuable in its own right, in and of itself. It's good to know those things. It's good to have those things. However, if the question is, I want a job making a bunch of money writing code or something like that, it makes less sense to spend time on things that really put you at a disadvantage when really it's just about what skills you know. So even though Stanford will hide behind this excuse of like, hey, we're a liberal arts education, we're not a boot camp. They declare that with pride, right? They're like, hey, we're not a boot camp. If you want a boot camp, go take a boot camp. Which once again, maybe you should. But it is kind of lame for somebody to go and get a computer science degree and then to have to go on Code Academy and teach themselves how to code in the languages that people are actually using in the 21st century, right? So in 2023, you should probably be learning Python and AI and things like that, but they're just going to have those as maybe some fun elective or something like that. Maybe they'll have it in their graduate offering. And part of that is just because, one, the talent that have those skills typically are not going to teach because it pays less money than going and making a bunch of money at Google, right? That's not true across the board, right? But it is a fact that it would be expensive, especially compared to other professors of other disciplines, to hire people at the industry wage for the things they know how to do, right? It would be kind of prohibitively expensive, especially for every single university to do this, right? So what that means is the curriculum stays at what it was 20, 30 years ago. It's slow to update. These large institutions can't move quickly. They have accreditation to worry about, right? You can't just introduce a new course because it has to be accredited by some governing body, national, state, whatever it is, right? So that's where kind of boot camps fit right in. And that's another thing, it's kind of like controversial that people will be like, well, this boot camp's unaccredited. And matter of fact is you're here to learn the skills. You're not there for a credential necessarily. Now, that said, Shaolin AI does offer a credential, a digital badge and physical badge that proves that you have these skills. However, does it hold as much weight as saying I have a PhD from Harvard or something? Probably not. But, the credentials don't necessarily mean as much if you can actually demonstrate the value of like, hey, I actually know how to do this. It doesn't really matter what credential you have if you don't know how to do it. And it doesn't really matter what credential you have if you do know how to do it. So, but yeah, like I said, these universities are proud to say we are not boot camps. We do not offer boot camps, right? And but at the same time, these universities across the board, including things like MIT, Harvard, etc. So if you look here, this is one of the biggest boot camp companies out there, and you can see they partner with big universities such as Harvard, Georgetown, Rutgers, big names, Stanford itself. All these universities are offering boot camps. Now, what boot camp do they offer? Well, it's a boot camp that's, not probably up to the standards that these universities typically search for. And there's been some controversy around that. However, they're offering them because they realize this is a gap. We can't compete with boot camps on these high demand coding jobs where you can just kind of pick up the skills, prove you can build a website, build an app, build a machine learning model, and you don't need a degree for it. companies will hire you it just based off of your own ability to prove yourself. And so they've realized this. And so what they've done is they've said, okay, we'll sell you our logo. You put it on your boot camp, and we can say, hey, we offer an AI education here at Stanford now. So even these old kind of institutional educational offerings are really trying to get into the boot camp game through this kind of licensing procedure. And once again, one of the issues they run into is that who is going to teach these people? And so typically, the teaching pool is not quite as good as you would say your PhDs or something like that would be. So why am I teaching a boot camp? Well, I enjoy it. I enjoy teaching. That's why I'm doing it. So I started teaching for one of these big institutional boot camps about 4 years ago. And what I realized is I dreaded the day job. And at night, I was teaching, night classes. It's similar to what I do now at Shaolin AI. We teach after, your 9 to 5, so you can kind of keep your job while you're learning, while you're upskilling. And what I realized is I dreaded, 9 a.m. But as soon as, the evening rolled around, I was excited. I was excited to talk to students, excited to share knowledge, excited to teach, problem solve, do all that type of stuff. So for me, it was just a preference that I realized, maybe working for a large corporation is not as fun as being able to teach and interact with students. But that being said, get the money from those large corporations. That's what a boot camp's all about, right? So yeah, let's see. What do I want to talk about? Okay, so yeah, and to continue the discussion on education, what is better, right? Am I saying boot camps are better because they teach you jobs for actual skills? Or am I saying Harvard is better because you do all the mumbo jumbo? Well, first of all, you're not learning Latin at Harvard anymore. You're not learning Greek. You're not reading the Aeneid. You're learning stuff that is of questionable value, I would say, historically and sociologically, however you want to put it. There's some questionable material now that you're forced to suffer through if you want to get a degree at one of these fine institutions nowadays. Kind of the humanities have gone down like this. Now me, look at me. What is my educational background in? Well, it's in the humanities. I got a degree from the humanities. So my degree is in linguistics. But luckily, I went to an institution that was a little weird. It's called BYU, Brigham Young University. And for some reason, they had a whole bunch of natural language processing courses for linguistics students. I don't think any other university has this for undergrads at all. Now, maybe they do. But most universities do not teach this type of stuff to undergrads, especially in the humanities. But they had coding courses in Python. The first one I took was in Perl, which was fun. Shout out to Perl, right? I'm really good at regular expressions because of it, so hit me up if you need help with that. But yeah, so anyway, I got this weird education where I was in the humanities learning about history and all that, art and literature. But then also I was getting kind of this direct education in Python, machine learning, and natural language processing. So very interesting background for me. Not everybody has access to that. Although I would say if you're interested at all in NLP, BYU is not a bad place to go for that type of education. Is for your undergrad, especially. And so, anyway, but yeah, so So, but should everybody, maybe go get an associate's or a bachelor's in whatever they can get and then hop on a boot camp? Or should they just, go graduate high school, do a boot camp, go get hired somewhere? Well, one, I think if you have that amount of drive, you probably should just do a boot camp and go get a job. Now, if you want to have the safety of the 4-year degree, which I totally understand, it makes sense. A lot of people are credentialists where they're just going to say, "Do you check this box?" And really going to a 4-year institution is all about getting that piece of paper so you can check that box on your applications. In which case, do it as cheaply as you can. Get the cheapest degree you can get, or find a quality institution. That's all I can say with that. But this goes all the way back. You think about the liberal Western education. This goes back to kind of the noblemen of the medieval time, or even further back, the noblemen of Rome, right? So a nobleman, a landowner in Rome, he did these type of like liberal arts education. He would have gone and learned about literature and history and philosophy, because that's what you did if you were a wealthy, noble elite. Also, I forgot I have a light here. Maybe I should turn that on. Hey. And so the noblemen concern themselves with kind of these, what are kind of made fun of in the STEM category, right? So STEM people will make fun of your humanities, basket weaving or whatever. But really, back in the day, the STEM category, the science, technology, less so science, but technology, engineering, and math, that was more concerned for, the road builders or the bridge builders. Those weren't noblemen so much. They weren't necessarily like, slaves or anything like that, but kind of the underclass concerned themselves with STEM. It would have been considered being like a mechanic back in the day if you went into engineering. Right, but now we've kind of flipped where the STEM is the aristocrat, right? But our education for STEM people is still based on this liberal arts framework where we're trying to train a nobleman. But really, we're trying the education needed for a STEM worker is more of closer to that of a mechanic, where you just need to go and learn how the engine comes apart and goes together and the proper numbers to go with that, right? So really your STEM education is at odds with this kind of traditional liberal arts education. And so this is why I think boot camps make a lot of sense in the field of computer science, because you just need the knowledge. You need to know how that engine works, how it goes together, what pieces go in where. That's essentially what you need to learn to be able to code. Now, if you want to go into the philosophy of computation and you want to get a PhD and go into quantum computing or something like that, by all means pursue a traditional education, and you'll be better for it. But if you're looking to get a job coding or a job in tech, or you just want to learn how to use AI, you don't need a 4-year degree for that. And so that's where really I think boot camps are a great fit. So why is it sometimes people are hesitant about boot camps? Well, one, you can't get your federal student aid to pay for it necessarily. So cost is a factor. But beyond cost, the biggest thing you get from boot camp is, in my opinion, that live interaction with your peers and with your instructor. It's all about networking, and also while you're learning, being able to bounce off of each other. Because you can go on the internet and learn how to code for free. You do not need to pay for a boot camp to learn how to code. Shocking, I know. But how many of you have tried to do that before? Okay, by raise of hands. I tried it. I tried to learn how to code on my own. Now, it was fun. I've learned how to make like a battleship game. I learned how to make a tic-tac-toe. I had no clue where to start. I didn't know what language to pick. You go to the Code Academy or something like that, and it's like, what language do you want to learn? I'm like, I don't know. Which one should I learn? So you just click a random one, and you start learning a language, and you don't really know anything about it or why you're picking it. And so, first of all, lacking direction can kind of be hard. Now, maybe you can find someone who can give you that direction, or you can find a guide to follow or something like that. That can help out quite a bit. But then the other thing you run into is you just kind of end up kind of circling. You don't really feel like you're getting any better. You don't know if what you're trying to learn is actually what you should be trying to learn. It actually gets kind of confusing once you get past those initial stages of learning about like lists and loops and conditionals and things like that. Then you're like, well, what am I supposed to learn now? And you can really spend hours and years learning things that really aren't relevant. And so that's the other benefit of a boot camp is it's designed to teach you job relevant skills, things that people are using today in companies to achieve things. And that's really a big part of the boot camp is the lessons are designed to give you that. So what makes one boot camp's curriculum better than another? Well, one I mentioned, not a lot of them focus on AI, partially because the it's expensive to make the curriculum. It's expensive to hire someone to write a curriculum. It's one thing to know how to do those things, but it's another to actually write the curriculum. Now, luckily, I already got a curriculum. Cool. And I can update it on the fly because very small company. So I see a new big model is the big man on campus. So for instance, I was initially going to focus on GPT-2, but then Llama 2 came out, so I updated it to Llama 2. We're using Llama 2 now, if you're familiar with those large language models. So we're able to update quickly. The other thing that you run into is a lot of times both the instructors and the writers of the curriculum do not speak English as their first language in a lot of these boot camps. I speak this from experience, seeing lesson plans where it's not quite right. It's not quite in English. And so that's just a matter of fact. And I think if you've ever tried to learn how to code, you go to YouTube, you click a video, and you try to listen to it, and you really can't understand what the person is saying. Maybe they have great information, and maybe this will get solved by AI being able to like auto subtitle things or whatever. But it helps a lot to have a language you can understand while you're learning. So that's a big part of it. So let me think what else I want to talk about. I mean, I think this addresses it. I mean, I could talk more about the validity of a 4-year degree and whether or not you're wasting time. But I think if your goal is to get a job in tech, I think a boot camp can help, especially, like, honestly, what I probably would do if I had to do it over again. I really like linguistics, so maybe I would have stuck with it. But maybe do a boot camp while I'm in college or over the summer, right? Add that on, so that way I have the actual skills plus the credential to come out of it. Now, a lot of you may be like, well, I already graduated or I already didn't do school and I'm not going back. So does a boot camp make sense for me? And what I'll say is, from my past experience, I've had people come through that were working as, loaders at a warehouse or something like that, and they come out of the boot camp getting a data job, getting a job in tech. So you can do it. You can switch careers. You can make a switch from blue collar to white collar. You can do that for sure. One thing that you'll learn if you end up doing a boot camp is a lot of it is dependent on your own effort. So it is, in that sense, it is like a boot camp. It is like a militaristic experience, because if you can't just BS it as much as you could with, at least I did in college, right? You can obviously use ChatGPT to solve all your homeworks, but you really need to work on building your own portfolio and doing things like that. Now, once again, Shaolin AI, totally designed to build you a portfolio with the curriculum we teach. But once again, you'll live or die on how much effort you put into it. So hopefully this wasn't too much of an ad for the course, and kind of we got to talk about some interesting things. But we're going to be talking about some other interesting things coming up. AI and propaganda, how that affects things. We're going to talk about a few people and how they were able to succeed post boot camp. We're going to talk about a few other things. But if you totally disagree with me on anything, or you think I overlooked something, write it down in the comments. Send me a note. And we will argue about it. No, I'm just kidding. And we can talk about it. And we'll go from there. And I guess that's the end. But yeah, thanks everybody. And we will see you next time.